Amazing turn of events. Millionaire rescues cleaner's special daughter and discovers hidden love. Jack Thornton, the epitome of success, raced through the gleaming marble lobby of his skyscraper. The expensive watch on his wrist seemed to mock the very concept of time as he hurried past the swathes of rich suits and high heels, each step echoing a hollow affirmation of the life he had built. The high-stakes meeting loomed. Investors were waiting, their expectations like vultures ready to prey on the slightest missteps. Just then, a muffled voice caught his attention, breaking through his financial reverie. Through the crowd, Jack heard Rosa, the building's devoted cleaner, speaking in urgent tones, her voice woven with worry. Before he could dismiss the moment as a distraction, he approached. "It's Lily," she said, her face pale. "There's been an accident. She might need urgent help." A wave of unease crashed over him. A pang of guilt clawed at his chest. The sharp contours of his daily ambition crumbled under the weight of genuine concern, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Should he really forego the meeting? The thought was suffocating. His thoughts swirled, each aspect of his meticulously crafted life colliding with something unfamiliar and uncomfortable. The world was supposed to revolve around profit margins and ambition. And yet, as he processed her words, an inexplicable urge surged through him, to help, to step outside his bubble of privilege. Despite the risks to his reputation and career, he found himself in that hospital waiting room, the harsh fluorescent lights casting a stark contrast to his glossy existence oh so far away. Families and individuals, their expressions a tapestry of fear and hope, surrounded him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks, and with each visit, Jack found himself drawn into Lily's unique universe. She radiated a fierce spirit that beckoned him to reconsider his values, his endless grind for status and wealth. He hadn't felt connected to anyone in years, but each interaction chipped away at the ice encasing his heart. Emboldened, he began to nurture hopes that blossomed like fragile flowers in the shadows of his ambition. Yet with each blossoming connection, the disapproval from his wealthy friends echoed louder. "What are you doing with someone like her?" they would ask, their judgment burning like acid in his veins. Didn't they see her strength, her profound light? It gnawed at him that they sought only reflection in their mirrors of wealth and position. With mounting internal conflict, Jack faced the harsh reality of privilege. Moments stirred in him like storm clouds, dark threats to the lifestyle he once cherished. As the portraits of wealth around him felt more like chains than accolades, he found himself torn. Would he convert back to the man of cold ambition? Or dare to hold on to this newfound depth of feeling? His breath quickened, tension tightening his chest like a fist, especially as he began to pull on threads connecting Lily's past to injustice. As he prepared to challenge the expectations of his elite circle, a charity gala loomed near, a battleground where ideals could clash violently. The night promised tension, a demand for choices he hadn't wanted to confront. Stand for her or for them? The question hung in the air, a precipice teetering on the edge of his very existence. Jack's heart raced with unease, the uncertainty gripping him tight. The world he knew beckoned. But for the first time, a flicker of something much richer, perhaps even love, began to erase the distance he had kept between himself and true connection. The expectations were overwhelming, but could he dare to emerge unchanged from the storm? The night was dark and filled with tension, leaving him on a fragile edge, unsure of where his heart would lead. Jack lingered in the suffocating silence of his luxurious penthouse, staring into the glassy expanse of the city below, as if it held the answers he desperately sought. The gala approached like an unyielding tide, each thought of it pushing him closer to the shore of confrontation. He was acutely aware that it wasn't merely a social gathering. It was a crucible for his evolving identity, a stark reminder of the duality he now inhabited. As he stared, he could hear the distant hum of the city, a stark contrast to the erratic rhythm of his heart. The thought of his friends, those gilded souls who adored wealth like a deity, evoked a familiar unease. They would soon question his association with Lily, dissecting every moment he spent with her with the precision of surgeons. But it was Lily's laughter, innocent yet bright, that haunted his thoughts, filling him with warmth. She had become his secret refuge, a reminder of the simple joys he had sacrificed on the altar of ambition. The night of the gala arrived, drenched in elegance and prestige. As Jack entered, the flickering candles cast shadows that danced like whispers of dread. He spotted his elite circle amidst the ballroom, their conversations swirling around him like the expensive whirls of their designer attire. Their laughter echoed like taunts, asking silently whether he would continue to let their expectations dictate his worth. But among the opulence, a steady flame burned within him. Jack's mind raced, grappling with the weight of his burgeoning revelations. If he once sought their validation, maybe now he could challenge their ideals, use the very platform they revered to showcase the depth of compassion he had unshackled within himself. Yet, the thought of taking that leap filled him with a paralyzing fear, the fear of undermining everything he had built. As he made his way through the crowd, he spotted a familiar figure standing in a sun-drenched corner of the room. It was Lily, radiant in her simple dress that seemed to glow against the backdrop of wealth. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, the cacophony around him faded into silence. "Jack," she said, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You came." Her sincerity struck him like a gentle wave, washing away the tension. No pretenses, no judgments, just two souls finding common ground. "Of course," he replied, the tight knot in his chest unwinding slightly. "I wouldn't miss it." In her presence, he felt the shackles of expectation loosening, the gaze of judgment now diffused into mere background noise. He took a breath, realizing something vital. No longer did he wish to represent mere currency or status. He wanted to represent truth, compassion. Lily had ignited a resolve within him that he couldn't easily dismiss, and standing there, a moment of clarity hit him. It was time for a reckoning. But just as he began to forge a path into this new purpose, a voice sliced through the moment like a blade. "What are you doing here, Thornton? Drowning in mediocrity now?" It was Nathan, his old ally turned antagonist. The air thickened with tension as whispers of judgment rustled around them. For an instant, Jack felt the cold hand of fear wrap around him once more. But he knew he had to respond. He was on the cusp of choosing, bend under the weight of expectations, or rise to the occasion and forge a new identity right there, in front of the very people who once dictated his worth. He took a step forward, his gaze steadying on Nathan, the warmth of Lily at his side igniting a fire fueled by newfound confidence. The time has come to face what matters, Jack thought resolutely. The room bristled with apprehension, and as he opened his mouth to speak, a rush of adrenaline propelled him forward. Would he stand for love and authenticity, or would he fall back into the shadows of societal expectation? The crowd grew silent, anticipation hanging heavily in the air. His choice loomed before him, and the stakes had never been higher. The silence that enveloped the room was as palpable as a physical force, pressing against Jack's chest. Every eye was locked onto him, a spotlight magnifying his inner turmoil. For a fleeting moment, he felt like a marionette on strings, the whispers of Nathan and the expectations around him threatening to pull him back towards the accustomed narrative of wealth and condemnation. But then he remembered Lily's incandescent presence beside him, a source of strength that fueled his determination. "Maybe mediocrity is where you're comfortable, Nathan." Jack finally said, his voice steady, betraying none of the storm that brewed within him. "But I'm not playing your game anymore." It was both a defiance and an awakening, one that rippled through the crowd. Gasps of surprise, murmurs of approval and contempt mixed into a charged atmosphere. Almost instinctively, Jack felt the tension in the air shift. It propelled him toward a moment he had consciously avoided for so long. A confrontation with not just Nathan, but with the very identity he had constructed for himself. This newfound sense of personal clarity was intoxicating. He could see a path unfurling, lit by the flicker of authenticity that Lily inspired in him. "I'm tired of superficial connections," he continued, pushing past the cloud of discomfort. "There's more to life than wearing the right suit or boasting the biggest yacht. Compassion and integrity matter more than any of this." He gestured at the grand ballroom, the opulence suddenly feeling fetid. "In this world we've forgotten that." Nathan's expression morphed from smug superiority to indignation, the weight of his unearned privilege being publicly challenged igniting his fury. "And what do you think that will get you, Jack?" he sneered, stepping closer. "A round of applause? You think everyone will listen to your sob story?" Jack met Nathan's glare unflinchingly. "It's not about applause. It's about meaning. It's time to stop hiding behind power and wealth and actually, truly live." In saying that, he felt a surge of exhilaration, freedom flashing through him like electricity. With Lily beside him, he dared to let vulnerability seep into his voice. "I want to fight for something greater than myself. There are people, like my friend here, who deserve to be seen, not just as a cleaner, but as a person with dreams. I want to use my platform to uplift, not to distance myself." For every word that spilled from his lips, Jack felt the shackles of expectation crumble, his past attempts to appease his circle dissolving into obscurity. The audience's reaction was mixed, but that uncertainty didn't shake him. It fortified his resolve. Then there was Lily, her hand slipping briefly into his, a wordless affirmation that she was there for him. In that quiet moment, he recognized that vulnerability needn't be a weakness. It could be a rallying point. He glanced around the room, catching the eyes of those he had once called friends. Some looked away, unable to digest the truth he was casting into the glittering void, while others studied him with newfound curiosity, perhaps reconsidering who Jack Thornton truly was. "Jack, you've lost your mind." Nathan's voice cut through the burgeoning concern around them. "Or maybe I'm finally finding it," Jack retorted, emboldened. The unease crackled like dry leaves underfoot, and he sensed that while he had stepped into a dangerous territory, there was a strange comfort in authenticity. Every breath he drew felt like liberation. The tension in the room surged, an electric anticipation swelling around them. His conviction seemed to pulse. He felt alive in a way he hadn't for years. But with a sudden wave of realization, he understood the truth he had uncovered. Challenging the status quo wasn't just personal. It had implications for his future, and the stakes were now intertwined with Lily's presence. Could he sustain this new identity he was forging? Would it cost him the very connections he had fought so hard to maintain? Or could he impact people positively through this radical shift? As Jack's mind raced, he resolved to explore these questions further. Little did he know that Nathan's response would be the catalyst to a more profound personal confrontation than he had ever anticipated, one that would test him in ways he could never foresee. The reckoning had begun, and the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Would he rise to meet the challenges of his transformed vision? Or would the ghosts of his past drag him down? Jack took a deep breath, poised for whatever would come next. Jack's heart raced as he absorbed the waves of disbelief and condemnation emanating from the crowd. That moment of exhilaration he had felt began to crystallize into a daunting reality. Nathan's piercing glare was now hollowed by confusion, but anyone could see the animosity brewing behind his clenched fists and reddened face. The tension was almost alive, and Jack braced himself for whatever was to come. "You're digging your own grave, Jack," Nathan hissed. His voice dripped with contempt, punctuating Jack's every thought like a chisel breaking down walls. The dismissals of his past were weighing heavier than anticipated, the architecture of his former life precariously shuddering. With a deep, steadying breath, Jack knew he had to cultivate resilience in the face of this confrontation. His resolve began transforming, not just against Nathan, but against his previous self, who had been submerged in a facade of affluence. Could he transition from the polished exterior he had carefully crafted to an authentic representation of himself? "I'm not afraid of the truth, Nathan," he asserted, each word punctuated with newfound strength. Just as he found his footing, shadows flitted across the crowd, a mix of skepticism and unexpected support. It dawned on him that this was not just a confrontation with Nathan. It was a confrontation with the societal norms he had once blindly embraced. Lily's presence remained a steady beacon behind him. He could feel the warmth of her encouragement igniting a fire within him, compelling him to tap deeper into his untapped potential. Turning to her, their eyes locked briefly, and for the first time since this chaos commenced, he felt anchored. She smiled softly, a reminder that his pursuit was not for himself alone, but for something larger, a shared vision that transcended their circumstances. "I can't change everything overnight, but what I can do is start by being real," Jack spoke to Lily. Yet he knew the broader audience was listening. "I want to create empathy, human connection. The people here are not commodities to be used for status. They're lives that matter." The words floated through the atmosphere, and Jack identified a shift. People were leaning in, drawn by the audacity of his perspective. As he glanced at the assembled faces, he noticed the snickers and crossed arms, the classic defenses against vulnerability. Yet beneath that layer, he glimpsed flickers of curiosity, seeds potentially blooming. What if Jack could dismantle the barriers of pretense not just for himself, but for others as well? It dawned on him then that perhaps his greatest strength was his capacity for connection, an innate understanding of the struggles people faced. In the whirlwind of thoughts, Jack realized what lay ahead wasn't merely about self-redemption. It was about redefining the boundaries of his influence. What did it mean to be a millionaire committed to uplifting those around him? He grappled with the dichotomy of privilege and responsibility. How could he wield his resources not as weapons of exclusion, but as tools of empowerment? "Your playtime of authenticity may cost you everything, Jack." Nathan's voice sliced through the air, each syllable a reminder of the high stakes. But instead of cowering, Jack felt invigorated. The world Nathan thrived in was crumbling right in front of him, because its foundation was built on shaky ground. A foundation Jack was already dismantling. "Maybe it will," Jack replied, his voice steady. "But it's a cost I'm willing to pay." In that instant of affirmation, Jack understood that he could empower others, give them the microphone, amplify their voices. It was a beautiful complexity wrapped in profound struggle, ignited by a single act of defiance to the status he'd so desperately clung to. As the murmurs of discontent dwindled, Jack pressed on. "There are words unsaid, dreams unfollowed. I'm ready to change that narrative." With each sound measured carefully but charged with emotion, he was on the cusp of awakening a movement, albeit a small one for now. A movement that invited others to share their truths, frailties, and victories. Yet amidst the resolve, a following thought curled at the edges of his mind, the prospect of losing everything he once held dear. Would he be left alone in this pursuit, an island in a sea of forsaken riches? Only time would reveal whether his transformation would resonate or result in isolation. Jack locked eyes with Nathan one last time, a silent challenge lingering between them. The time has come to face the truth. With that, Jack turned, pulse racing, prepared for the echoes of destiny awaiting him. The crowd's din gradually faded, but the weight of their collective scrutiny suffocated Jack. He took one tentative step forward, halting just shy of the raised dais where Nathan's tension took root. Every heavy glance felt like an accusation, and in that swirling chaos, Jack steeled his determination anew. If he was truly committed to stepping away from the facade, each challenge could become a catalyst, a crucible in which his genuine self could emerge. Jack's mind raced as he contemplated what actions lay ahead. What did it mean to chart a new course amid this turbulent sea of judgment? Would he tread lightly, or would he plunge headfirst into the unknown? Lily's presence anchored him. The confidence radiating from her expression ignited an ember deep within, something forgotten for too long. She had seen him fall, and now she was witness to his ascent. He yearned to validate that faith, to prove that his reawakening wasn't merely performative, but a new chapter, one fueled by a deeply rooted desire for authenticity and connection. "Listen," Jack called out, his voice carrying over the murmurs to broker a sense of calm. "This moment isn't about me fighting Nathan. It's about all of us confronting our truths, our vulnerabilities. I implore you to join this conversation." The subtle shift in energy surprised even him. A few heads nodded, and elbows unpeeled from clenched arms. What if he could convert this moment of confrontation into a shared vulnerability? What if he could inspire a dialogue that might ripple beyond his self-defined identity as a millionaire? "I'm not here to patronize or merely empty my pockets," he continued, his mind racing. "I want to engage, to ask questions that matter. The friendships formed over banquets and exclusive parties, were they ever real? Why must we hide our struggles behind polished veneers?" Jack's thoughts coiled around the concept of connection. He had never been this open. His entire life had been a meticulous construction, aligning with society's expectations. Now, standing on that precipice of truth, he questioned the very fabric of who he was. It prompted a deep self-inquiry that could unearth feelings of longing and discontent he had buried under the guise of success. As he scanned the crowd, Jack paused on an older woman's weathered face. She appeared uneasy, her eyes momentarily darting away from his gaze. He approached her, feeling the urgency to bridge that gap, each confrontation an opportunity, and every connection an exploration of shared identity. "What if we could talk?" he asked gently, a glimmer of hope igniting between them. "I know you've lived experiences that shaped you. I want to understand." With those words, vulnerability morphed into a bridge. The concept jostled the audience. It made them contemplate. Questions flooded the atmosphere, and Jack hoped collective truths would triumph over the allure of competitive bravado. Nathan's inflexibility flickered in the corner of Jack's eye. Something just beneath the surface hinted at a vulnerability in him too. Had this confrontation triggered something buried within Nathan that demanded reckoning? Jack mulled over whether confrontation could forge a connection, even with someone like Nathan. But doubts swirled in his mind. Did Nathan possess the capacity for change? Was this battle about earning his respect or breaking him down? The complexity of that relationship loomed larger, like a dark cloud hanging perilously overhead. With the stakes climbing, Jack knew he was walking a tightrope, poised for exhilaration or catastrophe. Regaining his breath, he turned back to Lily, searching for reassurance. Her steadfast belief in him became a lifeline, as though she had already navigated this labyrinth of authenticity with him, illuminating the path forward despite imminent dangers. "I won't back down," he declared with renewed courage, "and you shouldn't either. We owe it to ourselves." But as he surveyed the crowd once more, he felt the tumult of critiques hover above him like choppy waters, unpredictable, threatening to pull him under. In that moment, an unsettling whisper crept into his mind, echoing Nathan's earlier words. Jack could feel the urgency of his past tugging at him, tempting him to retreat to the familiarity of privilege and comfort, all while knowing that the risk of growth lay there, in the unknown. Whatever happened next could either become the foundation of his new reality or reaffirm the judgments of his past. With the crowd watching closely, he was faced with a decision. Would he allow himself this moment of vulnerability, or would he erect the walls of self-preservation once again? Time ticked down, and Jack inhaled deeply, ready to declare a commitment to the unfolding journey of self-exploration. but a shadow flickered at the edge of his vision. A figure he hadn't noticed before. Someone who could disrupt everything he was trying to build. In the midst of self-discovery, the impending revelation loomed. Would this new presence guide him toward deeper understanding, or would it shatter his fragile awakening? The figure stepped forward, gaining clarity as the crowd parted, revealing the intent behind the intrusion. Jack's heart raced. It was Claudia, the estate cleaner, her daughter at her side. The girl's face, set with a mixture of hope and trepidation, struck Jack to his core. The unexpected appearance of someone from his past at such a critical juncture felt like destiny's hand at play. He had always believed he was above the struggles of those less fortunate. Yet, as he gazed deeply into Claudia's eyes, he felt the remnants of his facade crumble reluctantly. "Claudia," he said, battling the sudden rush of nostalgia. Memories flooded him, a once wistful admiration and an unspoken bond forged in silence. He had tried to forget the world outside his bubble, yet here it was, thrust upon him with undeniable urgency. "Jack," she replied, her voice steadier than he expected. "We need to talk." Suddenly the air thickened with anticipation. She wasn't here for superficialities. Something loomed beneath the surface that demanded acknowledgement. Their connection, though understated, held a weight that drew his attention back to the crowd. "Now? Right here?" Jack glanced at the onlookers, aware of every judgmental glance. Wasn't this what he had been urging? A moment of authenticity, raw and unvarnished? Yet he felt like a puppet in a twisted play as he yearned for solitude to process this reality. "No, not here," Claudia insisted, her gaze firm. "But it can't wait. I'm afraid for my daughter's future, and you're the key." The crowd buzzed with hushed curiosity, fueling both his anxiety and exhilaration. Jack was aware this moment had the potential to echo through the lives of those standing before him. He considered stepping away from the dais, away from Nathan's glaring presence, away from the risk. But that ember of commitment ignited once more. He realized this was an opportunity to grapple with the truths he had long suppressed. "All right," Jack said, resolving to meet her concerns with sincerity. "Let's talk, but only if you'll all listen. I need your understanding." He gestured broadly, inviting the crowd into his conversion. With Claudia's urgent plea hanging in the air, how could he retreat? The chatter quieted, and he cautiously guided Claudia and her daughter away from the dais to the outskirts. Jack felt an electric tension weave through the gathering crowd as eyes followed them. Each step felt pivotal, intertwining their narratives more than he anticipated. Once out of earshot, Claudia took a breath, glancing around as if searching for eavesdroppers. "I wouldn't ask if I could manage this alone. My daughter Sophie is gifted. She deserves a better chance than I can provide. And you, Jack, your connections could open doors." He didn't know how to respond. His instincts screamed caution, yet the essence of his transformation urged him forward into the unfamiliar, fortified by Lily's unwavering support. "Why me?" Jack questioned, his voice quieter, more personal now. "What could I offer? Your past and your privilege carry weight that can lift her future," Claudia replied fiercely, eyes ablaze with unyielding determination. "But you must be willing to step outside your comfort zone, like you're trying to do now." The implications of Claudia's request crept into his resolve, twisting the very foundation upon which he intended to build his new identity. Would this alter the course he had just begun to navigate? As doubt tugged at him, questioning the innocence of his intentions and the motivations behind Claudia's plea, he locked eyes with Sophie. The girl's wide, uncertain gaze held a sincerity that mirrored his own childhood desires, craving space to grow and flourish, free from external expectations. In a moment of stark clarity, Jack understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about his past connection with Claudia, or the subtle revelations swirling in his mind. It was about confronting social disparities he once turned a blind eye to. "Okay," he said slowly, feeling the gravity of his choice settle. "Let's see what we can do." For Sophie, as he turned to return to the stage, the tumult within him simmered, a cocktail of fear and resolve. What lay ahead promised to challenge everything he had consumed about success and worth. Casting one final glance back at Claudia, and Sophie reminded him of the authenticity that had begun to bloom within. But, lingering in the periphery, Nathan's presence felt more threatening than ever, his expression unreadable yet menacing. Would this confrontation provoke further resistance, or could it evolve into an unexpected partnership in authenticity? The moment Jack stepped back onto the dais, a resounding certainty crystallized. He had ignited a turn of events that could elevate his journey into uncharted territories, where genuine connection was measured not in fortunes, but in the sacrifices made for others. Yet, the question hung heavy in the air. Was he ready to face the reverberations clashing against his awakening? Or would Nathan's fierce pride drive him to a breaking point of their interactions? As Jack gathered his thoughts on the stage, the crowd's collective gaze turned electric, buzzing with anticipation for his next words. The burgeoning tension was palpable. He could almost feel the curiosity curling around his throat like a tightening noose. He had made a choice, one that promised to unravel the tightly wound life he had constructed. But as he faced the sea of eyes, he realized he was still buried under layers of self-imposed expectations, teetering at the edge of vulnerability. "People," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "I want to talk about opportunity, about the doors that we don't see, because we're afraid to open them." Each word was a stepping stone into the uncertain territory he had just committed to exploring. He locked eyes with Claudia, her presence a grounding force, then let his gaze drift to Sophie, whose innocent hope struck him with renewed gravity. Jack exhaled slowly, beckoning for honesty from within. We often think of privilege as wealth, but in truth, it is the power to change lives, even if just one. Sophie deserves a chance to discover her potential. Small actions can lead to monumental changes. He paused as the crowd stirred, their murmurs reflecting both support and skepticism. Agitation swirled within him, fear that Nathan would exploit this moment, yet a deeper yearning to disrupt the flow of his own past. This was not merely a moment to help Claudia, it was a chance to forge a new path for himself. Nathan disrupted Jack's moment of clarity with his imposing presence, stepping silently to the front, his face betraying a smirk that was all too familiar. "And what makes you think that you can actually help her, Jack?" There was a scoff in Nathan's voice, a jab laced with underlying disdain, sowing doubt amidst the stirrings of Jack's resolve. "You're out of touch, buddy. Nothing but a charity case in the making." A wave of irritation coursed through Jack, but he forced himself to remain composed. Nathan represented the remnants of his old world, a reminder of the shallow values he had fought to escape. "It's not about me, Nathan. It's about empowering those who have been underestimated." The silence that followed felt thick, as if the world had stopped to witness the confrontation. Jack's heart thudded in his chest, the weight of his words anchoring his determination. He had spent years climbing the ivory towers of success, losing touch with the very struggles that had shaped him. Now standing at this crossroads, he felt the scales of morality shift. "Maybe you should take a lesson in humility," Claudia interjected, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension. "This isn't just about ambition, it's about connection and responsibility. We can't change the world alone, but we can change someone's life." Jack admired her courage. It resonated deeply, and fueled a flickering flame within him, a growing sense of purpose brimming with genuine emotion. He turned back to the crowd, realization dawning on him that his journey was not singular. It was interwoven with the stories of others. He spoke once more, the quiet strength in his voice carrying through the air. "Together we can dismantle barriers, starting right here." Yet beneath his emerging resolve lay intrinsic doubt. What if he failed? What if his influence was just a facade, quickly fading in the harsh light of reality? He wrestled with those questions, fed by Nathan's impending threat, compounding the inner conflict threatening to unravel him. As murmurs began to grow in intensity, Jack took a step further into vulnerability. He shared fragments of his own upbringing, of dreams dashed against societal expectations, igniting a flicker of recognition in the crowd. I was once a kid like Sophie, a boy lost in the shadows of others' biases. Let's not allow another story to go unwritten. Nathan's expression shifted subtly, uncertainty creeping into his demeanor. It was a brief flicker, yet it sparked a sense of intrigue within Jack. Could this moment be an inflection point for not just Sophie's future, but for his relationship with Nathan? With that thought, Jack's determination firmed up. He realized that confronting Nathan was not an end, but rather part of a broader journey toward authenticity, and that forging connections could dismantle the walls they had both built around their lives. But as Jack returned to the dais, a shift in the air hinted at unforeseen challenges awaiting him. For all the resolve he felt, a surge of anxiety crested from the uncertainty that lay ahead. As he surveyed the crowd, he caught Claudia's eye again, a silent agreement passing between them, a commitment to carve pathways together. Yet Nathan hovered still, an unpredictable force lingering at the edges of this new alliance, perhaps waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The crowd's anticipation simmered. Would this be a definitive turning point for Jack, or were darker undercurrents ready to pull him back into despair? In that moment, he knew clarity eluded him still. The struggle to break free from his past had only just begun, paving the way for a confrontation that could permanently alter the course of his life. The question now loomed heavier than before. Would he embrace the alliance forming before him, or falter in the face of formidable opposition? The decision lay just ahead, one that would shape not only his own destiny, but that of others too. Jack's breath quickened as he surveyed the crowd, anxiety crawling up from the pit of his stomach. The words that had spilled forth with unexpected ease now felt like weighty stones, each one threatening to anchor him to the past he longed to escape. Nathan's smirk remained fixed like an unwelcome guest, both mocking and familiar, capturing the essence of the battles Jack had fought to redefine himself. Determination pushed back against the fear constricting his chest. Why had he thought standing there was enough? He hadn't taken enough responsibility, hadn't pushed beyond his own narrative. As he felt the energy radiating from the audience, he realized that he wasn't just fighting for Sophie anymore. He was fighting for himself and the very essence of who he wanted to become. Claudia's words echoed in his mind, a reminder of the powerful intersection between ambition and responsibility. Empowering the underestimated was more than a mission. It was a call to step outside the carefully curated life he had built. He resolved then and there. He wouldn't retreat into safety. Instead, he would dive deeper into uncertain waters, confront his fears, and invite others to join him. The crowd was alive with murmurs, shifting their perceptions, and he could sense the collective heartbeat, some eager for more, others hesitating, perhaps mirroring his own doubts. Where would he take them? Would he guide them toward hope, or lead them into despair? The questions tumbled through his mind like unruly leaves caught in a storm. Jack's gaze fell on Nathan, who leaned against the stage with arms crossed, a serpent coiled and ready to strike. If Jack was to stand firm, he had to reveal something more than just bravado. He would have to unveil the true purpose behind his intention. You think I'm naive, Nathan? That I'm out of touch? I'm learning, and I'm evolving, just as we all can. As he called forth his inner strength, Jack's voice grew louder, sparking curiosity. We have a choice to make. Together, let's create a future for people like Sophie who feel as though their voices drown amidst the clangor of societal expectations. The rhythm of his heartbeat synchronized with that of the crowd, creating an orchestra of hope, budding curiosity, and potential. Sophie, seated among the audience with wide, bright eyes, became a symbol of everything he stood to gain, as well as everything he risked losing. What if he failed to inspire her? What if Nathan's influence reached deeper and dimmed her light? Each of these consequences surprised Jack with their intensity, pulling him closer to a chasm of both fear and desire. Now was not the time to consider the safety of his past connections. Jack made a choice. He stepped off the edge, focusing on Sophie and the audience, unleashing the resolve that had begun to stir after each confrontation. This is our chance to support those struggling in the shadows. I'm not here to hand out charity, I'm here to ignite potential. There it was, vulnerability cloaked in strength, an authenticity he had fought to piece together. He remained acutely aware of Nathan's presence. The stakes were closing in around him. Would his rekindled determination be enough to withstand Nathan's looming skepticism? Would it embolden the crowd to embrace togetherness rather than apathy? In that tension hung the possibility of transformation, a thread weaving through Jack's burgeoning vision of their collective future. The crowd began to shift, whispers of agreement rippling outward, but Nathan wasn't finished yet. The glint in his eyes promised struggle and challenge. Jack braced himself, waiting for the inevitable pushback, a confrontation about to erupt. The moment hung like a pendulum, ready to swing in either direction. Would Nathan retaliate, or would he falter, perhaps sensing a shift in his own perspective? With uncertain excitement, Jack stood firm, aware that confrontation loomed. It was time to face Nathan, not just as an adversary, but as a reflection of the fear he sought to overcome. The moment was approaching when the true measure of his transformation would be tested, but one thing was clear. A new journey had begun. As the last notes of his impassioned speech faded into the charged air, Jack's heart pounded like a war drum in the silence that followed. The murmurs transformed into an electrifying anticipation that thrummed throughout the crowd, a living entity sensing a pivotal moment. He narrowed his eyes at Nathan, meeting the challenge that rippled silently from his rival. Nathan's facade of confidence belied an undercurrent of concern. He was calculating, perhaps realizing that Jack was no longer the uncertain man he had once underestimated. "Fireworks and bravado don't fix anything, Jack," Nathan finally remarked, voice dripping with condescension. Yet Jack sensed the tremor of insecurity beneath the words. "You think a few grand speeches are going to change lives? People want action, not rhetoric." Jack clenched his fists, discomfort rising within him. But he made a conscious decision to channel that energy into focus rather than retreat. Nathan was right. Talk without tangible actions would lead to nothing. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the values he wanted to embody, the change he thirsted for, and the reality Sophie represented. "Then let's act together, Nathan. Show them what real change looks like." The crowd shifted again at his challenge. He felt the weight of their eyes, but rather than falter, he stepped closer to the edge of the stage, beckoning to them with a growing sense of purpose. Those who had once felt powerless were now vibrant undercurrents of energy, their potential palpable. But the internal conflict inside him couldn't be silenced. Was he truly prepared to become a catalyst for change? The stakes had risen higher than he had anticipated. Just then, Nathan pushed away from the wall and took a step towards Jack, his stature imposing, yet revealing a hint of ferocity. This was a confrontation that would either break him or solidify his resolve. "What do you know about true change, Jack?" Nathan's voice oozed skepticism, yet in his challenge lay seeds of desperation. This made Jack acutely aware of Nathan's position. It wired him to ring out a challenge of his own. "I know that change starts with vulnerability. I know it starts with the willingness to put myself out there, risking failure, instead of hiding beneath layers of cynicism. It's about taking responsibility." The rhythm of the crowd shifted, a wave of understanding washing over them. Jack seized that moment, adding weight to his challenge. "Each of us has a part to play. We can find our voice in the silence, or we can let it consume us. I choose the former." In that moment of vulnerability, Jack finally unraveled a deeper layer of himself, one steeped in authenticity and raw honesty. He wasn't just confronting Nathan, but also the fragments of doubt that had haunted him. Instinctively, he revolved to Sophie, her bright eyes alight with hope. How could he inspire her without risking everything he had fought for? A laugh erupted from Nathan, disarmingly sincere. "You think you're the hero here? Just wait until reality hits you." The crowd murmured again, unsure how to react. But Jack recognized this confusion. It mirrored the struggle within himself. It brought forth an important realization. He had indeed power to affect the outcome, but he needed to cultivate a sense of urgency. Vulnerability could drive him, but so could calculated action that came from planning. "I don't have the answers, Nathan," Jack declared, his voice unwavering despite the tumult beneath the surface. "But together, we can search for them. I'm not afraid of failing. Are you?" The challenge crested like a wave, while the audience held its breath. Nathan's smirk faltered momentarily, a flicker of uncharted territory appearing in his steely demeanor. Jack felt the tension, a bridge balanced between catastrophe and hope. This confrontation was merely the beginning. Jack knew now that the success of this endeavor depended on facing as much of his own uncertainty as Nathan's antagonism. The moment crackled with unspoken possibilities that would propel Jack into an unpredictable future. He sensed that Nathan's rebuttal would serve as the catalyst that might define their respective paths. The next step loomed substantial. Jack would need to confront the daunting reality of potential failure while remaining resolute in his vision. Would Nathan give in to the challenge? Or would they both spiral into the depths of their shared fears? Jack's heart raced as he prepared for whatever came next. The question remained: what sacrifices would he have to make to truly ignite the fire of change? As Jack braced himself on the stage, a palpable silence enveloped the crowd, charged with anticipation. He had laid his heart bare, facing Nathan's skepticism head-on. The path forward was uncertain, yet he felt a strange reassurance deep within him, a sense of purpose that had been absent for far too long. Nathan's expression shifted slightly, as if wrestling internally with the implications of Jack's declaration. "You really think playing the martyr will change anything?" he shot back. Yet his voice lacked the usual venom, revealing traces of uncertainty. Jack drew a breath, the air thick with tension. "Not martyrdom. This is about accountability. It's about understanding that privilege comes with a responsibility to drive change." The crowd began to murmur their thoughts, and Jack seized the moment, allowing his voice to carry into the depths of their collective consciousness. "Change won't happen in a vacuum. It needs collaboration. I'm here to bridge that gap, between wealth and potential, between disregard and recognition." He scanned the faces before him, capturing glimmers of recognition among their skeptical gazes. There was hesitation, yes, but also curiosity. For the first time, Jack felt as if he could inspire movement rather than just reaction, an authentic response to a deeply rooted issue. "I was once like you, Nathan, blinded by a pursuit of status. But Lily and Sophie opened my eyes. This isn't just about money or prestige, it's about people whose stories matter." He gestured toward Claudia and Sophie, who stood at the edge of the crowd, their expressions filled with hope. With each word, Jack felt the chains of expectation begin to shatter, one piece at a time. If we can inspire even one life to change, that's a ripple effect. That's where true wealth lies. Nervous energy crackled among the attendees, and Jack's heart raced. His confidence anchored him, infused with raw authenticity that resonated with the room. "I refuse to sit idle while we college ourselves in glitzy gatherings and dismiss those who strive for change. I want to be a catalyst beyond these walls." A buzz surged through the audience, and he pressed on, fueled by the awareness of their hesitant but willing hearts. "I may be a millionaire, but every person here has the potential to contribute to something greater. Together, as a network, let's strive for not just financial success, but for fulfillment, real, human fulfillment." Even Nathan, leaning against the stage, appeared riveted. Perhaps he too had begun to question the validity of his own convictions. Jack knew this might be the pivot point, the possibility that could bridge their animated exchanges with genuine dialogue instead of confrontation. "Let's not turn our backs on people like Claudia," Jack continued, and many heads nodded. People who work tirelessly yet struggle to make ends meet. They deserve opportunities. We can utilize our platforms to create scholarships, give mentorship, rally for change in ways that benefit everyone. In that moment, something shifted. It was subtle, but Jack could feel it. A palpable change in the atmosphere, a ripple of acceptance evolving from skepticism into intrigue. The crowd began to lean in, and he sensed an opportunity to persuade Nathan to transform too. "Let's prove what we're capable of," Jack said, his voice steady and firm, locking eyes with Nathan once more. "Lead the charge with me, Nathan. Use your position for good instead of sneers. Together, we can elevate the struggles of so many who feel invisible." There was a moment of silence as Nathan's eyes flickered, internally grappling between accepting Jack's challenge or dismissing it. Jack's pulse quickened, sensing the weight of the decision poised to unfold. In that fragile moment, his confidence weighted deeper, bolstered by the hope he had ignited in others. "Who's with us?" Jack called out, raising his arms toward the audience as if inviting them into his vision, hoping to spark a sense of urgency and shared destiny. A chorus of voices rose, gradually building momentum, expressing eagerness to rise with him. It resonated in his chest, an exhilarating rush of solidarity that enveloped him entirely. Seeing this, Nathan finally broke his silence, the mask of indifference slipping away to reveal a glimmer of vulnerability. "If you think I would partner with someone like you?" His voice wavered, revealing a fracture in his tough veneer. Yet then, the corners of his mouth curled upwards in a begrudging acknowledgement. "Maybe it's time I reconsider what I value." Jack's heart lifted. Nathan was suddenly willing to step off the island of superiority he had stood on for so long. The transformation was tentative, but it existed. Jack felt the air shift, infused with a promise of change. Together, they stood at the forefront of an undeniable momentum, a crossroads blossoming with opportunities to foster new connections, to empower voices long silenced. Jack knew this was just the beginning. The embers of transformational courage were igniting, inviting each of them to grab hold of a greater collective vision. In that moment, Jack basked in a profound sense of fulfillment, a sharp contrast to the life he once built solely on status and wealth. It was no longer about him. It was about those willing to join together to create meaningful change. As the applause began to swell, he took a deep breath, knowing they were setting out on a shared adventure, destined to reform lives and reshape perceptions. Jack had become the architect of his own transformation, challenged yet nurtured by those around him, forever united in a commitment to authenticity, connection, and collaborative growth. Finally, he had harnessed the very essence of purpose, leaving a legacy far richer than he had ever imagined. With the echoes of hope resounding in his heart, Jack smiled, embracing the vast possibilities ahead, ready to take the next steps alongside allies gathered in authentic community. It was a moment of triumph, one where his life intersected not just with success, but also with meaning, a testimony to the boundless potential sparked when true connection ignites empowerment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't hesitate to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. You need to subscribe now, because this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to take action. Your genuine engagement will help amplify these important narratives.